Grit, Angela Duckworth. I would very much recommend reading this one. Very good.
Why?
A number of reasons. It's fascinating. I'm going to pick out one of the points that are fascinating and then the overarching premise of the book that I want to talk about, because it does apply to business, as everything does, or I force it to. The naturalness bias. This is so true. We like, as a species, people who seem to have God-given talents. Let me ask you a question. What do you think is the greatest ever moment, or one of the greatest ever moments in Olympic history?
Olympic history. I ain't really a fan of the Olympics, so that might be a bit of a challenge.
Okay, well, iconic. You'll know what we're iconic.
Iconic would be the dirtiest race in history.
In our lifetime.
I'm not old.
All right. Fair enough.
I guess Mo Farah winning something.
Yeah.
Don't know. I'm not really into the Olympics.
All right. Dylan. Iconic Olympic.
Simone.
Yeah.
Biles.
Simone Biles. Yeah. The correct answer that everybody in this room should be saying is, of course, Usain Bolt winning the 100 meters and celebrating at the end. Surely. Iconic. Simone Biles, same thing. So the reason why these are iconic, in my opinion, and apparently not anyone else's in this room, incorrectly, Usain Bolt, Beijing 2008, he won the 100 meters at 70 meters and he's running, celebrating.
Okay.
Unbelievable. And Simone Biles is exactly the same. We are drawn towards these people. And there's something like, we could never do that. They're special. There's something about them. Usain Bolt, he's got all of these other athletes that they're training every day and they're trying to find these points of percentages to improve their performance. And you've just got this guy who just runs and he's just better than everybody. And Federer's the same. He's like I love Federer, by the way. He's just like an angel. I miss Federer. He's just the way he plays tennis is just in him. It's in his blood. He was born to do it. That's the way it feels.
Messi, Maradona.
Exactly. All the same. Exactly. Messi. He's born. Pass him a football. That's what he's supposed to do. It sticks to him. He's unbelievable. And we're drawn towards these people. And it's very much because of a naturalness bias. People like to find these people and see these people who seem like they've got this God-given gift. They can't work for it. They've just got it. It's genetic. It's in the blood. There's a number of reasons why we like this. A psychological theory is because it's a sort of comforting to know. It's like, well, there's nothing I can do. I can't work to be that. It's just they've got it. I think it sometimes takes a little bit of pressure off of thinking, you can work towards anything, which isn't true in some places. As much as I could train, I'm probably not going to be as good as Usain Bolt in the 100 meters. It's unlikely. I could try. But I'm never going to get there. And we're drawn towards these people. And this subject of grit is very much talking about, of course, the opposite of that. It's a mindset of having something that you care enough about, what I would call in business an infinite cause, or something you're driving towards, that you just stick to. You deepen your knowledge in something. You're determined and you're relentless in your discipline towards driving towards getting better at that thing or achieving that thing. I think this is something that is waning in our society, this principle of grit. The pendulum has swung, and there is a middle ground that is, of course, useful. And this is something we've spoken about before, about well-being, looking after yourself, burnout, which are they're very important subjects in there. And of course, there's a middle ground that's important. There's been lots of problems in the past with those things being prevalent and causing issues within companies or whatever context you want to talk about it. But there is no exchange for grit. There is no exchange for having something you're aiming towards and just dedicating yourself towards it and step by step getting better and better and better. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that you started with the opposite and then talked about this. I've heard the phrase about being gifted and them being a God-given right, and the fact that you look at someone and think I could never do that. I'm also interested in the angle of social media influencers, the X Factor lifestyle. Like I'm going to go there. Ryland Clark, talentless at what he does in terms of the singing, which was a singing program that the guy was on, basically got famous for crying and has managed to somehow get this amazing career. And the fact that you can be given this amazing career without all the hard work, and the fact that lots of people really work shine.
Very harsh on Ryland there. Ryland Clark.
He's got lots of really good qualities. Very charismatic. However,
he's got grit.
He was in a singing competition. He couldn't sing.
He was lucky. He got very lucky at the start for sure, because he can't sing very well. I'm really sorry, Ryland. But
if you're listening,
yeah, he can't. He's not a very good singer. He can sing a bit. He'd be at karaoke. But he's pretty good. But that's all it is. But he's a hard worker. He's got grit. He knows what he wants to do. He wants to be famous. You can then discuss the virtues of that desire. He wants to be famous. He wants to be on TV. And he was single-minded in that. He worked towards it. He had this thing that he wanted to do. And he's got the grit and determination to work hard enough, be disciplined in order to get there. I think he's a good example of it. He got lucky, of course, but he's in the position he's in. It's funny how much we're talking about Ryan Clark. But I would say he's an example of someone with grit. And now let's talk about an organisation. The reason why I like this principle so much is because there is this thing, in order to have grit within something, you have to have a big thing that you're aiming towards. You want to learn to play the piano, which I am starting to do. But this is my goal, is I have a tune that I want to be able to play very well. Claire de Lune. Hard. I'm at the bit now where I can't do the thing. But that's what I'm aiming towards. That within this segment of thing, that's what I'm aiming towards. I want to be able to play this song. For me to get there, it takes grit, because you get to a phase you think, I don't want to do it anymore. This is hard, or I can't figure it out. But you have to have this central thing, this objective, or this aim, this destination you're aiming towards. And then you have to be disciplined and focused towards getting there. It's exactly the same with a business. I speak about this thing of having an infinite cause, which in business, because you need to be infinite-minded rather than finite-minded if you want to have long-term success, you have to have this infinite cause, which is a thing that you're eternally aiming towards but can ultimately never achieve. That cause needs to be strong enough that it will sustain you through very difficult times, through times where you think, I don't want to do it, or this is too difficult. It has to be a strong enough of a desire that you can persevere through those periods. And you can have a business where you've got a product and your product loses relevance in the market, or technology changes. So there's an existential shift the business has to go through. If that cause is strong enough, you'll figure out a way. You will figure out a way to get there. It might be very difficult, but there are so many organizations, and this is something that's always been interesting me when reading memoirs of CEOs that have had very successful organizations, even Amazon and Nike. In the early days, there are invariably a period where it's like, if this investor didn't come and we would have been out of business the next day. Always these periods. And now you looking it through the lens of a availability bias, how many companies must there be that have had these Amazon everything store ideas, but they didn't have that grit to make it through those difficult moments. And it's the same structure when you read this book. There's some really useful sort of diagrams of exactly how this works. If you have this big thing at the top you're aiming towards, and sometimes the methods of you getting there need to change, but if it's strong enough, you get there. You're focused on it. It's a really fascinating read. There's another thing in there that I really like that is very much sort of a personal structure method that's useful implementing, is what they call the hard thing rule. So Angela talks about it in her household, that every member of the household has to be doing something that is a challenge and is really hard. Whether that's learning a language, whether it's trying to learn an instrument, you always have a thing that's difficult and sometimes is unpleasant, but that you're aiming towards and looking to master. And you have to do it for whether it's 6 months or a year. When you commit to it, you have to do it. And it's a good muscle. It's a good muscle to test and to have that muscle memory of, that when things get tough, you just keep going. Sometimes, it's like this subject of motivation. It's an emotion. It's transient. It comes and goes. It's this underlying discipline or grit, which is the thing that will sustain you over the long term.
You've mentioned a few times infinite cause.
Mm-hmm.
So someone's listening and goes, yeah, okay, how do you work out what yours is?
Process of discovery. So depends on your starting position. If there are a number of businesses out there that start cause first.
Can you give an example?
I can think of many examples of like my clients. Let me try and think of Amazon. Let's use the big examples. Okay. Jeff Bezos conceived of the everything store, these were his words, before he even sold a book. That's what he wanted to be, the everything store. That translated into what I would now call his infinite cause. He, of course, wouldn't, because it's my particular phraseology of being the most customer-obsessed company in the world. That's their infinite cause. They want to be the most customer-obsessed company in the world. You can never achieve that. You can never get there like, we are now the most, we've done it. Because as soon as you, as Jeff Bezos would say, which is another book maybe we'll talk about one day, he talks about this principle of it's still day one. They're the words that he writes in his company memos every year. It's still day one. He was once asked about 5 years ago, you say it's still day one in every memo, what's day two? And he said, a slow and painful death. As soon as you think you're getting there, we talk about this, and we've spoken about this before through the lens of entropy and sand castles and piles of sand. If you think your sand castle is built and you leave it and you sat back on your deck chair admiring your sand castle, just leave it a couple of hours and see what happens. A gust of wind blows, your sandcastle is a pile of sand. So you have to have this infinite perspective, which is why I call it an infinite cause, that you're always working. You never get there. You're always working towards something. So Amazon have that as an example. And this has sustained them through, you'd call them the everything store. I think that'd be pretty fair to say. Because of their success, and they've just created, how much have they changed the world? It's unbelievable, the way that products are bought. They've just created this frictionless, their own terminology, which is part of being the most customer-obsessed company in the world. They've just created this completely frictionless environment, and it's all in pursuit of that cause. There have been many situations, even something pragmatic. So, for example, they were in a situation where at the early days, they outsourced their fulfillment centers to someone else. They were running their fulfillment centers, and they weren't executing anywhere near towards the level of what Amazon wanted to. But it was financially speaking, it made the most sense in that situation. But they looked at that decision through the lens of their infinite cause of being the most customer obsessed company in the world. And the decision became easy. We need to get it in. We need to build our own fulfillment centers because we're going to execute it in a way far beyond to a level of excellence that they won't, to a level of customer obsession that the externals won't. And they've made these decisions all throughout the ages. So there you go. There's a big example of an infinite cause and the underlying grit and determination and discipline of single-mindedly aiming towards achieving that thing.
So I took you off on a tangent there by asking for the example, but I think what we were talking about was how do you work out what your infinite cause is?
Yeah. So two ways of doing it. Of if you're lucky enough to be in a position of you're starting a business and you know what your cause is because you're just driven by inspiration, and often happens when you've got a entrepreneur who's been working in a certain industry and they've just had this idea of something they want to do differently, and they start first, or something's happened in someone's life where they've got this thing that they know is going to be the thing that fulfills them. And the biggest test of all of this is, or I think it is, of 100 years old on your deathbed, looking back at your life, what will you have done in your career so you feel really deeply proud of what you've done? I think that's always the best measure. The other way is probably more commonly the case is an entrepreneur starts a business because they see a gap in the market and an opportunity to make some money and profitability. And they get there and they do that for a few years and they become stable and they're growing. And throughout your experiences over those years of running the company, you get this internal feedback of the thing that matters to you, the things you care about, whether it be for you in your business. There'll be things over your 15-ish years of running the business that you go, this is what I care about. It started as there's a gap in the market. Yeah. Opportunities to make some money, but then there's this big thing that you get home at the end of the year. That was a good day. That meant something to me. Making money is great, and it's more of a dopamine hit. That's what it is. You get the rush, but when you've done something for a customer and you get some feedback, and no matter what it is, it can be any different type of thing that can be the cause for a business. But it's that lived experience collectively as an executive team, if you're that sort of business, that you think, this is what matters to us. And what you'll then find is when you just eternally aim towards that thing, and you're always finding different ways to better execute that thing, you'll build a very successful organization, incidentally. If you don't have an infinite cause and your business is based around a particular product or service and the iteration of that product or service, what will naturally happen is, going back to entropy, when that product or service inevitably loses its demand, you're in a position where you think, what do we do now? Kodak, given this example before, invented the digital camera. George Eastman, his original proper infinite cause, is to find better ways to connect average folks to their memories. That was his infinite cause. Very successful company over decades and decades and nearly a century. If they, at the point where they would have invented the digital, Steve Sasson, internal Kodak inventor, invented the digital camera, Kodak's business, all based around selling film cameras. They make money out of the flash box, the film, the paper it's printed on, every element of it. If they were to ask themselves the question of how can we find ways to better connect average folk to their memories, they would have pursued the digital camera because it's the best option. But they weren't strongly at that point. They weren't strongly enough connected to their cause. They were worried about protecting their business as it is now. And now Kodak are what Kodak are. There's a bit of nostalgia around Kodak, but they used to be a very significant business that employed a lot of people. So having this cause, or in personal life, this goal you're aiming towards, and just caring about it enough is an important thing. Discovering something that you really genuinely care about and being single-minded and disciplined towards aiming towards that thing. In a personal life, you'll build great skills, you'll build real depth of knowledge. In an organization, you'll be infinitely successful because you can even withstand existential threats to the business. When industry shifts, you'll find another way.
Is it a black hole there then? Because you said before, you start with an infinite cause, great. If you don't, you start with a niche in the market, at some point you will start to have this higher feeling. So is there a black hole in companies where you can't build an infinite cause because you haven't had the feelings yet? Like in a new business set up to jump into a gap in the market, is it hard for them to try and find the infinite cause?
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound too fluffy about feelings. They're all, we're humans and we're emotional beings, and so it is absolutely legitimate and pragmatic to say that you do get internal feedback where the thing you care about. I don't want to make it too fluffy. It's just a pragmatic thing, like, that's what we care about, and it might even be of. You see where you have impact, where your product or service or the way you see where it has impact, and you think, that's what I care about. It can be something you just see a gap that's not happening in the market, and you're executing that really well. Going back to books we spoke about earlier of the difference of McDonald's versus 11 Madison Park. One of them, the thing that they care about is just having a customer having an experience in a restaurant that they'll never forget for the rest of their lives. That's what they're then aiming towards. With McDonald's, I couldn't cite what their version of an infinite cause is, but it's of course something very different. It's about consistency, and you just know. And I suppose you can look at their marketing and draw conclusions of. You always see the family go and they're all having a double sausage and egg McMuffin in the morning, whatever that thing is that they're always trying to aim towards. But it is a process. It's something, again, you reach a tipping point in an organization where you need to start figuring this out, because it does leave a vacuum. It leaves Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl would call it an existential vacuum, and it's the same with an organization. If you don't find out what that thing is, you'll fill it with something. You'll fill that thing everybody's aiming towards with something, and it's usually money. You think, let's earn as much money as we possibly can. We've spoken before. If that is if that getting the oxygen in, or the money, the essential resource, is the sole and primary focus, you'll make finite-minded decisions. You'll think about, how can we make the most money this year, this quarter? And you'll start to do things that aren't necessarily conducive to long-term success. So you need to replace it with something higher, something more important, because, again, not making it too much about feelings and fluffiness, you'll make more money over the long term. You'll be more successful of an organization.